Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Josephine Hart Poetry Foundation, marking 20 years of our partnership with the British Library and 10 years of the Foundation. This evening's Poetry Hour was designed to coincide with the library's exhibition, Fantasy, Realms of the Imagination. Please welcome our readers to the stage. Before I introduce our actors for the evening, I have some very exciting news about the Foundation to share with you. Lord Saatchi and I are handing over to a new team. Our successors are Dr. Mary Wellesley as the new director of the Foundation, and West End theatre producer and director Michael Grandage as our new chair of trustees. Mary is a gifted writer and historian, an associate member of the English faculty at Oxford, an associate fellow of the Institute of Historical Research. Her book on medieval manuscripts, Hidden Hands, was published in the UK and the US in 2021. Her work appears regularly in the London Review of Books, for whom she also hosts podcast series on medieval literature. I'm delighted that the legacy and future of the Foundation is in such good hands. After 6 wonderful years of directing 30 live performances, 100 videos, and working with 80 amazing actors, and posting 5,000 social media posts, I'm very happy to hand on. I will continue my relationship with the Foundation. How could I not? I've been going to poetry hours since I first came to London from Dublin, and was a huge admirer of Josephine Hart. And so it's been a great privilege and pleasure to lead the Foundation for 6 years out of its 10 as a foundation. I just want to say a few words that Josephine wrote about the basic purpose of the Poetry Hours and what she believed before I introduce our amazing cast this evening. Josephine wrote about the basic purpose of the Poetry Hours, and that a public performance of the great poetry of the dead poets read aloud by great actors should be the norm in London. She also expressed the philosophy behind the formula for her Poetry Hours in 3 parts. First, the life of the poet. She agreed with Yeats that we understand the work better if we understand something of the poet's life. As Yeats said, the poet always writes out of his personal life, in his finest work out of its tragedy, whatever it may be, remorse, lost love, or loneliness. You will find all of Josephine's introductions on our website and in her anthologies published by Virago: Life-Saving, Why We Need Poetry, Words That Burn, and Catching Life by the Throat. Second, the poets read aloud. Josephine believed that poetry startles us into a more full sense of life, that it is a trinity of sound, sense, and sensibility, and that the sense of sound, what Robert Frost called the sound of sense, will be lost unless we hear it. Language caught alive, the gold in the ore, is the sound. Auden put it more bluntly: no poem which is not better heard than read is good poetry. And third, great poetry read by great actors. Josephine Hart agreed with T.S. Eliot that poetry should be read to us by skilled readers, the feeling for syllable and rhythm penetrating far below the conscious level of thought and feeling, invigorating every word. Our actors this evening are going to do just that, and I will introduce them one by one now. So, Mackenzie Davis. Her breakthrough role was in the 2013 feature film Breathe In. She went on to star as Cameron Howe in 40 episodes of TV drama Halt and Catch Fire. In 2021, her role in the post-apocalyptic series Station 11 earned her a Critics' Choice Award for Best Actress. Her leading film roles include Mariette in Blade Runner 2049, Grace in Terminator Dark Fate, co-starring with Kristen Stewart in rom-com Happiest Season, and the recently released Swimming Home. In spring 2023, Mackenzie played Isolde in Phaedra at the National Theatre, London. Welcome to the Poetry Hour. It's her first time with us. And next, Shirley Henderson is a multi-award-winning Scottish stage and screen actress, perhaps best known as Moaning Myrtle in the Harry Potter films, and as Renée Zellweger's sidekick Jude in the Bridget Jones films. Recently, she starred with Rufus Sewell and Olivia Williams in The Trouble with Jessica. Her other film credits include Stan and Dolly, Filth, Frozen, Once Upon a Time in the Midlands, 24-Hour Party People, and of course, Trainspotting. Her TV credits include Star Wars Episode 9, Happy Valley, Southcliffe, The Nest, and The House Across the Street. Shirley won an Olivier Award for leading actress in Conor McPherson's Girl from the North Country. And thank you, Shirley. Also a newbie. Felicity Jones began her career at the age of 12 in The Treasure Seekers. She played Emma Grundy in The Archers on BBC Radio while studying English at the University of Oxford. She later won the Sundance Special Jury Prize for her performance in Like Crazy and an Empire Award for Best Actress for Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Her leading role as Jane Wilde Hawking in The Theory of Everything earned her Best Actress nominations for BAFTA, Golden Globe, Oscar, and Screen Actor Guilds Award. Her other feature films include Rogue One, On the Basis of Sex, A Monster Calls, The Invisible Woman, and Dead Shot. And Felicity has read with us before my time, just after Josephine Hart sadly passed. She read with Eddie Redmayne at the Arts Theatre in London. So welcome back. And Patrick Kennedy, a Poetry Hour stalwart, as just filming two series, Senna and The Day of the Jackal. His other film credits include Steven Spielberg's War Horse and Atonement. Among his many television credits are Mrs. Wilson, the BBC's Bleak House, Miss Marks, Peep Show, the Netflix miniseries The Queen's Gambit, and Boardwalk Empire, for which he was a Screen Actors Guild Award nominee. And coincidentally, Patrick and Shirley are working on a new film together at the moment. So enjoy the evening, and thank you all very much.
Downstairs I laugh, I sport and jest with all. But in my solitary room above, I turn my face in silence to the wall. My heart is breaking for a little love. Upstairs, broken-hearted, in the fireless back bedroom, Christina Rossetti sat writing. Downstairs, a constant and copious stream of old friends that included William Morris and John Ruskin came to visit her expatriate father, Professor of Italian at King's College London, and her adored mamma, who presided with immense pride over a brilliant brood of children. It was in necessary isolation that Christina Rossetti shut the door to face the naked truth and carved out of the drama of her soul a poetry in which an intensity of feelings and emotions is captured with exquisite and painful precision. Hope deferred maketh the heart sick, a line from Proverbs, oft repeated in her work. Hope was indeed deferred by the spiritually willful Rossetti, who turned away from love twice. Why? God, who requires a fine fidelity, would seem to have been responsible. Men came second. Within that dialogue with self, the battle between soul and body, Rossetti, a girl of extreme temperament, who suffered a mental breakdown in early teenage years, found her poetic inspiration. Her work is a drama of elective repression by a young woman who, in an ecstasy of religious fervour, rejected the possibility of sexual passion for which, if Goblin Market is any guide, she urgently thirsted. Her first love, James Collinson, an artist whom she met when she was 17, was rather unreliable spiritually. This was a fatal flaw in Christina's eyes. Collinson changed his religion from that of committed Catholic to Protestant, and then back again to Catholic. He was not, perhaps, a man for the long haul of the soul. Her second, perhaps deeper affection was for Charles Badgett Cayley, from whom, aged 30, she eventually received a proposal. He was, alas, untroubled by any belief at all. which of course was the trouble. Spiritual battles, of course, can be profoundly exhausting. Yet despite the perpetual internal war, Rossetti set about the publication of her work with a pragmatic professionalism, indeed worldliness, which may surprise many. Aged only 17, she had 2 poems published in the prestigious literary weekly, The Athenaeum. Then, in April 1862, aged 32, her debut collection, Goblin Market and Other Poems, was published by Macmillan, and thus she entered literary history. The acclaim was immediate, and though she would write hundreds of poems, lines of which are amongst the most quoted in literature, she would never stun her readers to quite the same degree. 150 years later, we remain stunned. Few have turned intense longing into poetic masterpieces. None have created one as mysterious as Goblin Market. It tells the tale of 2 sisters, Lizzie and Laura. Laura succumbs to the tones as smooth as honey of the goblin men's incessant cry to "Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy." And having sucked and sucked and sucked until her lips were sore, finds that yet her mouth waters still and wishes to buy more. Alas, the goblins seemingly have disappeared, and Lizzie, fearful that her sister will die from longing for the juice which has so entranced her, sets out to find them. It is a dangerous endeavour, for when she does, they kicked and knocked her, mauled and mocked her. Many interpret this section as a rape scene. Lizzie, though dripping in their juice, never allows their poison to pass her lips. She bravely rushes back to Laura and commands her to eat me, drink me, love me. Laura, make much of me. For your sake I have braved the glen and had much to do with goblin merchant men. Years later, this tale of sisterly love is recounted by the repentant Laura when both are adult women with children of their own. It's one of the most bewildering poems in literature, but then Christina Rossetti was a bewildering woman. Though she lived a chaste life, she was not a prude, nor was she innocent. In the years immediately prior to the publication of Goblin Market, she worked in a house for fallen women in Highgate. Yet she insisted that the poem was indeed a fairy tale. It was described by The Spectator in 1862 as a true children's poem, which is far more delightful to the mature than to children. Though Christina Rossetti was to live for another 32 years after publication and saw her poem often republished, she never gave any further guidance. Why should she? She knew what she'd done. She'd written a strange masterpiece, one of broken yet insistent rhythm, so compelling as to seem as irresistible as the goblin's fruit, with their implied images of the Eucharist, which mingle with nursery imagery and impossible to ignore luscious sexual innuendo. It is a Miltonian tale of temptation and triumph over evil that is meant to have inspired Alice's Adventures Underground, whose author, Lewis Carroll, regarded Rossetti's work as a work of real genius. It was, according to Edith Sitwell, perhaps the most perfect poem written by a woman in the English language. To Goblin Market.
Morning and evening, maids heard the goblins cry. Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy. Apples and quinces, lemons and oranges, plump unpecked cherries, melons and raspberries, bloom down-cheeked peaches, swart-headed mulberries, wild free-born cranberries, crabapples, dewberries, pineapples, blackberries, apricots, strawberries, all ripe together in summer weather, morns that pass by, fair eves that fly. Come buy, our grapes fresh from the vine, pomegranates full and fine, dates and sharp bullaces, rare pears and greengages, damsons and bilberries. Taste them and try. Currants and gooseberries, bright fire like barberries, figs to fill your mouth, citrons from the south, sweet to tongue and sound to eye. Come by, come by.
Evening by evening, among the brookside rushes, Laura bowed her head to hear. Lizzie veiled her blushes. Crouching close together in the cooling weather, with clasping arms and cautioning lips, with tingling cheeks and fingertips. Lie close, Laura said, pricking up her golden head. We must not look at goblin men. We must not buy their fruits. Who knows upon what soil they fed their hungry, thirsty roots? Come by, call the goblins, hobbling down the glen.
Oh, cried Lizzie. Laura, Laura, you should not peep at goblin men. Lizzie covered up her eyes, covered close lest they should look.
Laura reared her glossy head and whispered like the restless brook. Look, Lizzie, look, Lizzie, down the glen tramp little men. One hauls a basket, one bears a plate, one lugs a golden dish of many pounds weight. How fair the vine must grow, whose grapes are so luscious. How warm the wind must blow through those fruit bushes.
No, said Lizzie. No, no, no. Their offers should not charm us. Their evil gifts would harm us. She thrust a dimpled finger in each ear, shut eyes, and ran.
Curious Laura chose to linger, wondering at each merchant man. One had a cat's face, one whisked a tail, one tramped at a rat's pace, one crawled like a snail. One like a wombat prowled, obtuse and furry, one like a rattle tumbled hurry-scurry. She heard a voice like voice of doves cooing all together. They sounded kind and full of loves in the pleasant weather. Laura stretched her gleaming neck, like a rush-embedded swan, like a lily from the beck, like a moonlit poplar branch, like a vessel at the launch when its last restraint is gone. Backwards up the mossy glen turned and trooped the goblin men, with their shrill, repeated cry, Come by, come by! When they reached where Laura was, they stood stock still upon the moss, leering at each other, brother with queer brother, signalling each other, brother with sly brother. One set his basket down, one reared his plate, one began to weave a crown of tendrils, leaves, and rough nuts brown. Men sell not such in any town. One heaved the golden weight of dish and fruit to offer her. Come by, was still their cry. Laura stared, but did not stir, longed, but had no money. The whisk-tailed merchant bade her taste in tones as smooth as honey. The cat-faced purred, the rat-paced spoke a word of welcome, and the snail-paced even was heard. One parrot-voiced and jolly cried, Pretty goblin, still for Pretty Polly. One whistled like a bird. But sweet-toothed Laura spoke in haste. Good folk, I have no coin, to take were to purloin. I have no copper in my purse, I have no silver either, and all my gold is on the furze that shakes in windy weather above the rusty heather. You have much gold upon your head, they answered all together. Buy from us with a golden curl. She clipped a precious golden lock. She dropped a tear more rare than pearl, then sucked their fruit globes fair or red. Sweeter than honey from the rock, stronger than man rejoicing wine, clearer than water flowed that juice. She never tasted such before. How should it cloy with length of use? She sucked and sucked and sucked the more. Fruits which that unknown orchard bore, she sucked until her lips were sore. They flung the emptied rinds away, but gathered up one kernel stone, and knew not was it night or day, as she turned home alone.
Lizzie met her at the gate, full of wise upbraidings. Dear, you should not stay so late. Twilight is not good for maidens. Should not loiter in the glen in the haunts of goblin men. Do you not remember, Jeanie, how she met them in the moonlight, took their gifts both choice and many, ate their fruits and wore their flowers plucked from bowers, where summer ripens at all hours. But ever in the moonlight she pined and pined away, sought them by night and day, found them no more, but dwindled and grew grey, then fell with the first snow, while to this day no grass will grow where she lies low. I planted daisies there a year ago that never blow. You should not loiter so.
Nay, hush, said Laura. Nay, hush, my sister. I ate and ate my fill, yet my mouth waters still. Tomorrow night I will buy more, and kissed her. Have done with sorrow. I'll bring you plums tomorrow, fresh on their mother twigs, cherries worth getting. You cannot think what figs my teeth have met in, what melons icy cold, piled on a dish of gold, too huge for me to hold. What peaches with a velvet nap, pellucid grapes without one seed. Odorous indeed must be the mead whereon they grow, and pure the wave they drink, with lilies at the brink, and sugar sweet their sap.
Golden head by golden head, like two pigeons in one nest, folded in each other's wings, they lay down in their curtain bed, like two blossoms on one stem, like two flakes of new fallen snow, like two wands of ivory tipped with gold for awful kings. Moon and stars gazed in at them, wind sang to them lullaby, lumbering owls forbore to fly, not a bat flapped to and fro round their rest, cheek to cheek and breast to breast, locked together in one rest.
Early in the morning, when the first cock crowed his warning, neat like bees, as sweet and busy, Laura rose with Lizzie. Fetched in honey, milked the cows, aired and set to rights the house, kneaded cakes of whitest wheat, cakes for dainty mouths to eat. Next churned butter, whipped up cream, fed their poultry, sat and sewed. Talked as modest maidens should, Lizzie with an open heart, Laura in an absent dream, one content, one sick in part, one warbling for the mere bright day's delight, one longing for the night.
At length slow evening came. They went with pitchers to the reedy brook, Lizzie most placid in her look, Laura most like a leaping flame. They drew the gurgling water from its deep. Lizzie plucked purple and rich golden flags, then turning homeward said, the sunset flushes those furthest, loftiest crags. Come, Laura, not another maiden lags, no wilful squirrel wags. The beasts and birds are fast asleep.
But Laura loitered still among the rushes, and said the bank was steep, and said the hour was early still, the dew not fallen, the wind not chill, listening ever, but not catching the customary cry, come by, with its iterated jingle of sugar-baited words, not for all her watching, once discerning even one goblin, racing, whisking, tumbling, hobbling, let alone the herds that used to tramp along the glen, in groups or single of brisk fruit merchant men.
Till Lizzie urged, oh, Laura, come, I hear the fruit call, but I dare not look. You should not loiter longer at this brook. Come with me home. The stars rise, the moon bends her arc, each glowworm winks her spark. Let us get home before the night grows dark, for clouds may gather, though this is summer weather, put out the lights and drench us through. Then if we lost our way, what should we do?
Laura turned cold as stone, to find her sister heard that cry alone, that goblin cry, come buy our fruits, come buy. Must she then buy no more such dainty fruit? Must she no more such succulous pasture find, gone deaf and blind? Her tree of life drooped from the root. She said not one word in her heart's sore ache, but peering through the dimness, naught discerning, trudged home, her pitcher dripping all the way, so crept to bed and lay silent till Lizzie slept, then sat up in a passionate yearning, and gnashed her teeth for baulked desire, and wept as if her heart would break. Day after day, night after night, Laura kept watch in vain, in sullen silence of exceeding pain. She never caught again the goblin cry, "Come buy, come buy!" She never spied the goblin men, hawking their fruits along the glen. But when the moon waxed bright, her hair grew thin and grey. She dwindled as the fair full moon doth turn to swift decay and burn her fire away. One day, remembering her kernel stone, she set it by a wall that faced the south, dewed it with tears, hoped for a root, watched for a waxing shoot, but there came none. It never saw the sun. It never felt the trickling moisture run, while with sunk eyes and faded mouth she dreamed of melons, as a traveller sees false waves in desert drought, with shade of leaf-crowned trees, and burns the thirstier in the sandful breeze. She no more swept the house, tended the fowls or cows, fetched honey, kneaded cakes of wheat, bought water from the brook, but sat down listless in the chimney nook and would not eat.
Tender Lizzie could not bear to watch her sister's cankerous care, yet not to share. She night and morning caught the goblin's cry, "Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy." Beside the brook, along the glen, she heard the tramp of goblin men. The voice and stir poor Laura could not hear, longed to buy fruit to comfort her, but feared to pay too dear. She thought of Jeanie in her grave, who should have been a bride, but who, for joys brides hope to have, fell sick and died in her gay prime, in earliest winter time, with the first glazing rime, with the first snowfall of crisp winter time. Till Laura, dwindling, seemed knocking at death's door. Then Lizzie weighed no more better and worse, but put a silver penny in her purse, kissed Laura, crossed the heath with clumps of firs at twilight, halted by the brook, and for the first time in her life began to listen and look. Laughed every goblin when they spied her peeping, came towards her hobbling, flying, running, leaping, puffing and blowing, chuckling, clapping, crowing, clucking and gobbling, mopping and mowing, full of airs and graces, putting wry faces, demure grimaces, cat-like and rat-like, rattle and wombat-like, snail-paced in a hurry, parrot-voiced and whistler, helter-skelter, hurry-scurry, chattering like magpies, fluttering like pigeons, gliding like fishes, hugged her and kissed her, squeezed and caressed her, stretched up their dishes, panniers and plates. Look at our apples, russet and dun, bob at our cherries, bite at our peaches, citrons and dates, grapes for the asking, pears red with basking out in the sun, plums on their twigs, pluck of them and suck of them, pomegranates, figs. Good folk, said Lizzie, mindful of Jeanie. Give me much and many. Held out her apron, tossed them her penny. Nay, take a seat with us, honor and eat with us, they answered grinning. Our feast is but beginning. Night yet is early, warm and dew pearly, wakeful and starry. Such fruits as these no man can carry. Have their bloom would fly, have their dew would dry, have their flavor would pass by. Sit down and feast with us. Be welcome guest with us. Cheer you and rest with us. Thank you, said Lizzie, but one waits at home alone for me. So without further parleying, if you will not sell me any of your fruits, though much and many, give me back my silver penny I tossed you for a fee. They began to scratch their pates, no longer wagging, purring, but visibly demurring, grunting and snarling. One called her proud, cross-grained, uncivil. Their tones waxed loud, their looks were evil, lashing their tails. They trod and hustled her, elbowed and jostled her, clawed with their nails, barking, mewing, hissing, mocking, tore her gown and soiled her stocking, twitched her hair out by the roots, stamped upon her tender feet, held her hands and squeezed their fruits against her mouth to make her eat. White and golden Lizzie stood like a lily in a flood, like a rock of blue-veined stone lashed by tides obstreperously, like a beacon left alone in a hoary, roaring sea, sending up a golden fire, like a fruit-crowned orange tree, white with blossoms honey-sweet, sore beset by wasp and bee, like a royal virgin town topped with gilded dome and spire, close beleaguered by a fleet mad to tug her standard down. One may lead a horse to water, 20 cannot make him drink. Though the goblins cuffed and caught her, coaxed and fought her, bullied and besought her, scratched her, pinched her black as ink, kicked and knocked her, mauled and mocked her, Lizzie uttered not a word, would not open lip from lip, lest they should cram a mouthful in, but laughed in heart to feel the drip of juice that syruped all her face, and lodged in dimples of her chin, and streaked her neck, which quaked like curd. At last the evil people, worn out by her resistance, flung back her penny, kicked their fruit along whichever road they took, not leaving a root or stone or shoot. Some writhed into the ground, some dived into the brook with ring and ripple, some scudded on the gale without a sound, some vanished in the distance. In a smart ache, tingle, Lizzie went her way, knew not was it night or day, sprang up the bank, tore through the furze, threaded copse and dingle, and heard her penny jingle bouncing in her purse. Its bounce was music to her ear. She ran and ran as if she feared some goblin man dogged her with jibe or curse or something worse. But not one goblin scurried after, nor was she pricked by fear. The kind heart made her windy pace, that urged her home quite out of breath with haste, and inward laughter. She cried, "Laura!" up the garden. "Did you miss me? Come and kiss me. Never mind my bruises. Hug me, kiss me, suck my juices squeezed from goblin fruits for you, goblin pulp and goblin dew. Eat me, drink me, love me, Laura, make much of me. For your sake I have braved the glen and had to do with goblin merchant men."
Laura started from her chair, flung her arms up in the air, clutched her hair. "Lizzie, Lizzie, have you tasted for my sake the fruit forbidden? Must your light like mine be hidden? Your young life like mine be wasted? Undone in mine undoing, and ruined in my ruin, thirsty, cankered, goblin-ridden?" She clung about her sister, kissed and kissed and kissed her. Tears once again refreshed her shrunken eyes, dropping like rain after long, sultry drought. Shaking with anguish, fear, and pain, she kissed and kissed her with a hungry mouth. Her lips began to scorch. That juice was wormwood to her tongue. She loathed the feast. Writhing as one possessed, she leapt and sung, rent all her robe and wrung her hands in lamentable haste, and beat her breast. Her locks streamed like the torch borne by a racer at full speed, or like the mane of horses in their flight, or like an eagle when she stems the light straight toward the sun, or like a caged thing freed, or like a flying flag when armies run. Swift fire spread through her veins, knocked at her heart, met the fire smouldering there, and overbore its lesser flame. She gorged on bitterness without a name. Ah, fool to choose such part of soul-consuming care. Sense failed in the mortal strife, like the watchtower of a town, which an earthquake shatters down, like a lightning-stricken mast, like a wind-uprooted tree spun about, like a foam-topped waterspout, cast down headlong in the sea, she fell at last. Pleasure past, and anguish past. Is it death or is it life? Life out of death.
That night long, Lizzie watched by her, counted her pulses' flagging stir, felt for her breath, held water to her lips, and cooled her face with tears and fanning leaves. But when the first birds chirped about their eaves, and early reapers plodded to the place of golden sheaves, and dew-wet grass bowed in the morning winds, so brisk to pass, and new buds with new day opened of cup-like lilies on the stream.
Laura awoke as from a dream, laughed in the innocent old way, hugged Lizzie but not twice or thrice. Her gleaming locks showed not one thread of grey. Her breath was sweet as May, and light danced in her eyes. Days, weeks, months, years afterwards, when both were wives with children of their own, their mother hearts beset with fears, their lives bound up in tender lives, Laura would call the little ones and tell them of her early prime, those pleasant days long gone of not returning time. Would talk about the haunted glen, the wicked, quaint fruit merchant men, their fruits like honey to the throat, but poison in the blood. Men sell not such in any town. Would tell them how her sister stood, in deadly peril to do her good and win the fiery antidote. Then joining hands to little hands, would bid them cling together. For there is no friend like a sister, in calm or stormy weather, to cheer one on in the tedious way, to fetch one if one goes astray, to lift one if one totters down, to strengthen whilst one stands.
I believe in the holiness of the heart's affections, so wrote John Keats. And it is perhaps because of that belief that he was able to fashion so much beauty from so much sorrow. His father, owner of a successful livery stables, died when he was 10. His mother remarried within weeks and then disappeared, forfeiting her rights to her children and to the business. Her son became such a savage playground fighter that many believed he would make his name all right, but as a soldier. She returned 6 years later, was nursed lovingly by him, and died from tuberculosis, the family curse. That drop of blood is my death warrant, he cried out when his own turn came. His turn came at a time when he was passionately in love and loved in return by Fanny Brawn, a Hampstead belle with many suitors, which made him fearful. He was very small and very conscious of it. Their love was impossible to consummate due to the risk of infecting her. Haunted beauty and death permeate La Belle Dame sans Merci. Robert Graves believed we should see the mysterious lady that is the subject of the poem as the muse, but also consumption itself. On first looking into Chapman's Homer is a wondrous tribute to the power of art. Keats placed Chapman's translation on the desk of a friend at Clark's School, Enfield. The night after, they both sat till daybreak, reading, Keats crying out with delight at particular passages. Endymion is a vignette from Keats to his friend Stevens, who'd studied medicine with him. A thing of beauty is a constant joy. What think you of that, Stevens? It's got a true ring, but it lacks something. Later, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. What think you of that, Stevens? It will last forever. Keats and his friends had high hopes for Endymion, published in 4 books in 1818. but it was savaged, particularly by the critic Lockhart, who mocked the Cockney poet and the imperturbable idiocy that is Endymion. Keats was devastated. The wound was deep. He was seriously ill, and his friends were desperate for him to escape another English winter. He sailed for Italy in September 1821 and died in Rome, aged 25. His gravestone there reads, "This grave contains all that was mortal of a young English poet who on his deathbed, in the bitterness of his heart, at the malicious power of his enemies, desired these words to be engraved on his tombstone. Here lies one whose name was writ in water." In this, John Keats was absolutely wrong. He is an immortal. To Chapman's Homer.
Much have I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez when, with eagle eyes, he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien.
La belle dame sans merci. Oh, what can ail thee, knight-at-arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight-at-arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy's song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, "I love thee true." She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses 4. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed our woe-betide, the latest dream I ever dreamt, on the cold hillside. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, "La belle dame sans merci, thee hath in thrall." I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hill's side. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing.
This is excerpts from Endymion. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep a bower quiet for us, and asleep, full of sweet dreams, and health, and quiet breathing. Therefore, on every morrow are we wreathing a flowery band to bind us to the earth, spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth of noble natures, of the gloomy days, of all the unhealthy and o'er-darkened ways made for our searching. Yes, in spite of all, some shape of beauty moves away the pall from our dark spirits, such the sun, the moon, trees old and young, sprouting a shady boon for simple sheep. And such are daffodils with the green world they live in, and clear rills that for themselves a cooling covert make 'gainst the hot season. The mid-forest brake rich with a sprinkling of fair musk-rose blooms. And such, too, is the grandeur of the dooms we have imagined for the mighty dead. All lovely tales that we have heard or read, an endless fountain of immortal drink pouring unto us from the heaven's brink. Nor do we merely feel these essences for one short hour. No, even as the trees that whisper round a temple become soon dear as the temple's self, so does the moon, the passion poesy, glories infinite, haunt us till they become a cheering light unto our souls, and bound to us so fast that whether there be shine or gloom o'ercast, they always must be with us, or we die.
Bright star, bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendour hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new soft fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest, still, still to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death.
I always go on until I am stopped, and I am never stopped. So wrote Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was himself tameless and swift and proud, a stirring line from his Ode to the West Wind. He started as he meant to go on, an incandescent child, sometimes literally, attempting to heal his sister's chilblains by means of electrical experiment, the family cat a less lucky victim. He blew up his desk at Eton, where he was known as Mad Shelley and mercilessly bullied, such that he became as savage a fighter as Keats. He was sent down from Oxford for writing The Necessity of Atheism, the first public avowal of atheism in England. And to whom did Shelley send his dangerous, indeed potentially treacherous document? Why, to the bishops, of course. His father, Sir Timothy Shelley, MP for Horsham, was horrified and sent his communications via legal channels. A furious Shelley disinherited himself. He found consolation with the Westbrook family and ran away with their 16-year-old daughter, Harriet, with whom he had 2 children. Later, he fell madly in love. This time, the phrase is forensically accurate, with Mary Godwin, also aged 16, the brilliant daughter of William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft, author of A Vindication of the Rights of Women. Mary Shelley would, of course, go on to write the Gothic masterpiece, Frankenstein. Shelley's life was marked by tragedy. Harriet drowned herself in the Serpentine, and her family disputed Shelley's rights to their children, who were fostered. Mary and Shelley lost 2 of their 3 children, Clara, aged 1, and William, aged 3. Through it all, Shelley kept on writing, mostly without encouragement from a literary establishment which despised him. Our excerpt from Adonais contains his savage attack on the critic Lockhart, and verses that read like a hymn to the dead Keats, numbered now by Shelley with the kings of thought. The Eternal Ozymandias, our last poem of the evening, was written after a visit to the British Museum's Egyptian exhibition. In 1822, Shelley was in the midst of writing The Triumph of Life, the most despairing poem of true eminence in the language. Its last line reads, "Then what is life? Happy those for whom the fold of..." He put down his pen and went to sail his boat, the Don Juan, named in honor of Byron. It sank in a storm in the Bay of Lerici. He was 29 years old. When his body was recovered, a copy of Keats's Hyperion was found in his pocket. He was cremated on the sands, but his heart wouldn't burn. And that's the essence of Shelley, buried beside Keats in Rome. His heart was indestructible. Cor cordium, heart of hearts, reads his gravestone. Probably literature's most truthful epitaph.
Excerpts from the Hymn to Intellectual Beauty. While yet a boy, I sought for ghosts and sped through many a listening chamber, cave and ruin, and starlight wood, with fearful steps, pursuing hopes of high talk with the departed dead. I called on poisonous names with which our youth is fed. I was not heard, I saw them not. When musing deeply on the lot of life, at that sweet time when winds are wooing all vital things that wake to bring news of birds and blossoming, sudden, thy shadow fell on me. I shrieked and clasped my hands in ecstasy. I vowed that I would dedicate my powers to thee and thine. Have I not kept the vow? With beating heart and streaming eyes, even now I call the phantoms of 1,000 hours, each from his voiceless grave. They have in visioned bowers of studious zeal or love's delight outwatched with me the envious night. They know that never joy illumed my brow, unlinked with the hope that thou wouldst free this world from its dark slavery. That thou, O awful loveliness, wouldst give whatever these words cannot express. The day becomes more solemn and serene when noon is past. There is a harmony in autumn and a lustre in its sky, which through the summer is not heard or seen, as if it could not be, as if it had not been. Thus let thy power, which like the truth of nature on my passive youth descended, to my onward life supply its calm. To one who worships thee and every form containing thee, whom, spirit fair, thy spells did bind to fear himself and love all mankind.
These are excerpts from Adonais. Our Adonais has drunk poison. Oh, what deaf and viperous murderer could crown life's early cup with such a draught of woe? The nameless worm would now itself disown. It felt, yet could escape the magic tone, whose prelude held all envy, hate, and wrong, but what was howling in one breast alone, silent, with expectation of the song, whose master's hand is cold, whose silver lyre unstrung. Live thou, whose infamy is not thy fame, live! Fear no heavier chastisement from me, thou noteless blot on a remembered name, but be thyself, and know thyself to be. And ever at thy season be thou free to spill the venom when thy fangs o'erflow. Remorse and self-contempt shall cling to thee. Hot shame shall burn upon thy secret brow, and like a beaten hound tremble thou shalt, as now. He is made one with nature. There is heard his voice in all her music, from the moan of thunder to the song of night's sweet bird. He is a presence to be felt and known in darkness and in light, from herb and stone, spreading itself where'er that power may move which has withdrawn his being to its own, which wields the world with never-wearied love, sustains it from beneath, and kindles it above. He is a portion of the loveliness which once he made more lovely. He doth bear his part, while the one spirit's plastic stress sweeps through the dull, dense world, compelling there all new successions to the forms they wear, torturing the unwilling dross that checks its flight to its own likeness, as each mass may bear, and bursting in its beauty and its might from trees and beasts and men into the heaven's light. The splendors of the firmament of time may be eclipsed, but are extinguished not. Like stars to their appointed height they climb, and death is a low mist which cannot blot the brightness it may veil. When lofty thought lifts a young heart above its mortal lair, and love and life contend in it, for what shall be its earthly doom, the dead live there and move like winds of light on dark and stormy air. The inheritors of unfulfilled renown rose from their thrones, built beyond mortal thought, far in the unapparent. Chatterton rose pale. His solemn agony had not yet faded from him. Sidney, as he fought, and as he fell, and as he lived and loved, sublimely mild, a spirit without spot, arose. And Lucan, by his death approved, oblivion as they rose, shrank like a thing reproved. And many more, whose names on earth are dark, but whose transmitted effluence cannot die, so long as fire outlives the parent spark, rose, robed in dazzling immortality. Thou art become as one of us, they cry. It was for thee yon kingless sphere has long swung blind in unascended majesty. Silent alone amid a heaven of song, assume thy winged throne, thou vesper of our throng. Or go to Rome, which is the sepulchre, oh, not of him, but of our joy. 'Tis not that ages, empires, and religions there lie buried in the ravage they have wrought, for such as he can lend. They borrow not glory from those who made the world their prey, and he is gathered to the kings of thought, who waged contention with their time's decay, and of the past are all that cannot pass away.
Ozymandias. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
Again?